Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for our latest online event here at the University of California, Merced. Thank you so much for joining us for this current student town hall. My name is Ricky Hill, and I'm an e-recruiter and engagement specialist here at UC Merced. And let me go ahead and give you a couple of quick tips before we get started. If you would like to adjust your audio settings, you can do that in the lower left corner of your screen by clicking the audio settings button and making those changes as needed. If you would like to adjust the size of your window, you can do that by clicking View Options in the upper portion of your screen and making those changes as you see fit. Lastly, and most importantly, even though we have a lot of great information to share with you during this event, we also welcome you to submit your questions. There is a Q&A button at the lower portion of your screen. You are welcome to go ahead and submit those questions, and we will get to those throughout the presentation. At this time, I would like to welcome you to this live event for the current student town hall. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and toss things over to our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Dr. Charles Nies.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us and the opportunity to get some updates. We are planning to host these on a regular basis, and so you should anticipate that monthly we will be joining you all as an opportunity to give you updates and to hear from you and to answer your questions. So super excited to have you with us tonight. We're hoping to give you some updates about fall and what we're preparing for related to that, as well as answer your questions that you may have about the remainder of spring semester. With that, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Sarah, who's joining us for the phone call. So I'm going to toss it over to our Vice Provost and Dean for Undergraduate Education.
Great. Thank you, Charles. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I want to just share with you a little bit about what we're planning for fall right now. So you may have seen the summer session schedule recently came out, and a majority of the courses for summer session are being offered remotely. We have a handful of in-person offerings. Most of those are kind of smaller, upper division, independent study, research courses, more project-based courses. Most of our courses for summer online. However, as we're starting to think about the fall, we are trying our hardest to plan for in-person instruction as much as possible. So when you see your fall schedule come out, most of the courses will be offered in person. We will, however, during the summer be monitoring public health conditions, and we may be making some modifications to that schedule of classes and the modality of the offerings as we approach the fall semester if public health conditions don't permit us to have fully normal in-person classes at full capacity. However, we expect that most students will have most of their courses in person. So we're looking at a variety of different contingency scenarios to kind of fallback points depending on what's happening. But our goal is really to get you as much in-person instruction in our classes, starting to reopen the campus as much as possible. Behind the scenes, there'll be a lot of planning kind of working on what that looks like in the classroom. We still expect there to be some amount of wearing masks, social distancing perhaps. So we're going to be looking at the different conditions as we approach the fall to make sure we can offer our instruction in a way that's as safe as possible for you, but also we're really excited to welcome you back or welcome you to the campus for our first year students. I'll hand it back over to Charles to say a little bit about some of the other pieces that are in the works for fall planning.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and so we will also be planning on having students in our residence halls. And so our plan is to, right now we're looking at potentially put students in double rooms as we look at, we know that we've got the capacity to put in triples and quads and all of that, but just trying to minimize maybe the number of people that might live in one of those spaces. We're looking at potentially having students coming back to double rooms. And so we'll work closely with our incoming first year students who will be joining us in the fall, as well as for all of you who are either living on campus currently or want to come back and live in your residence halls for that experience in the fall. We'll be working closely with you as an effort to really kind of find those options that make the most sense. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that that would be available as we look at doing that option. As Sarah mentioned, we probably still expect some public health related conditions that we would have in place. And so that's part of the reason why we're looking at minimizing the number of students who might be in a residence hall room, and then thinking about how we try to manage as few people, and so we don't create a ton of people in one spot all at the same time, particularly indoors. We're continuing to do things to try to open up the campus currently. for some outdoor activities. And so one of the things that we'll be installing this month and hopefully have available by the end of March is an outdoor fitness court. And so that will be available for use for students who are in the Merced area. But again, as we add some of these outdoor spaces, all of that is to be mindful of what the fall might look like and how we can continue to support what's going on. You might anticipate that, as we move forward, we're looking at how we will continue to do testing on a regular basis. We currently have the Saliva testing station set up on campus so that it's not putting the swab up your nose anymore. We just have students spit in a tiny little tube, and we're able to turn that around pretty quickly within 48 hours to get test results back. And so we're looking at probably continuing to do some of that. The campus is moving forward around vaccines. You may have seen that we've started our own vaccination clinic, and so that has been happening. We don't get a lot of doses of the vaccination. We only get about 100 a week, and so we started out with kind of the employees that are most active and working on campus. As that population continues to grow, and we look at being able to expand who we're able to give the virus to. The vaccination too, not the virus, vaccination. Our hope is that at some point in time, we'll be able to get enough doses on campus that for students who are interested in getting the vaccine, we'll be able to administer that as well. So all of that is part of our ongoing public health related efforts that we are doing. You also may have heard that we partnered with Merced College as well as Dignity Health and Merced County Public Health to launch a vaccination clinic here in the city of Merced for the community. And so we were able to give out almost 300 doses of the vaccine here in the community and that strong united partnership. And so all of that is part of the campus's ongoing efforts to address the public health issues. Is not only making sure we're doing what we can to keep our campus healthy, but also how we can support the larger county-wide efforts and initiatives. And so all of that continues to move forward. So that is a big part of where we're at. I know that one of the other questions is what's going to happen the rest of spring. In fact, I see it already. Will graduation be in person this spring? And so some of you may know that we recently did a survey where we reached out to a large number of our students who had already registered to graduate and participate in the May commencement ceremonies. We reached out to that population and we got an 80% response rate back from that survey. So that's awesome. And of those people that responded, the vast majority of you said you would like some in-person component, even if that meant that there would be no guests, that you would just be as a graduate participating in that ceremony while we live stream whatever event we do. So know that that is part of what we're looking at. We have not made a final decision. We are looking at making that decision by March 1st, right around that time frame. Don't hold me to the March 1st date. Right around the March 1st time frame, we're hoping to be able to make a decision on what that ceremony will be like. But as you know, we are continuing to look at and explore options. In fact, there was a whole group of students who wrote up a proposal, and I met with them recently this semester, about a week ago, to review their proposal on kind of how they thought we might be able to set up some form of a graduating student only experience where the students themselves came onto campus and walked across stage. So all of that is part of what we're looking at, but we will know more right around the first week of March. All right. Will students be required to get the vaccine, or will it be optional? One of the pieces to let you all know is that the decision that was made by the Centers for Disease Control and the approval through the processes for that vaccine to be administered was what's considered an emergency use agreement around that vaccine. Under those conditions, you cannot mandate that people get the vaccine unless it's a workplace situation where they either need to have the vaccine or they need to wear full personal protective gear in order to participate in those activities, or if you can find out other options for them. And so at this point in time, we wouldn't be able to mandate that you get the vaccine in order to participate in class, but we would hope that people would make that choice and do that not just for their own well-being, but big part of getting vaccinated is part of a public health effort. and our effort to minimize potential exposure to individuals who getting the virus is much more greater consequences and risk for them. And so part of the efforts that we're doing at UC Merced are not just to vaccinate the individuals, but in that process, do that larger public health efforts that we are trying to do for the good of our bigger community. So I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, one of the other questions asks, for fall registration, will the classes listed also mention if they're in person or not? Yes, absolutely, that will be mentioned. However, for fall, when the schedule comes out, the vast majority of the classes will be listed as in person. The plan is to offer most of our courses in person. There's a handful of courses that will be offered online, some of which would have normally been offered online pre-COVID. But yeah, the majority of the classes will be offered in person. The change will be is as we approach the semester, we'll try to stay in frequent communication with the students to let them know if we have to make any changes. Some classes may pivot so that they're in person, but instead of attending 3 hours a week, maybe you only attend in person 2 hours a week and do 1 hour online in order to minimize the number of students in a room or something like that. But we'll let you know any updates on that as we approach the semester. But at the time of registration, when the schedule opens, the plan is for it to be in person. And our hope is that we can find a way to safely bring our students back to campus.
Sounds good. And I see that there's some questions about, will our current first year students, who will be second years next year, be in their sophomore year, will they be able to live on campus? And that is what our hope is. Our hope is that we'll probably have right around 3,000 to 3,300 options available for students to live on campus. So we would be able to accommodate the entire incoming first year class, as well as a fair number of students who wanted to continue to live with us. We will not be, as some of you know, when you first agreed to come to UC Merced a year ago at this time, if you're a first year student, we had that 2-year on campus live-in requirements. And so we'll be putting a pause on that for you all and starting up again with the incoming first year students in the fall of 21. We did that and we instituted that program because it showed and gave, there was a lot of evidence that showed that students who lived on campus for those 2 years graduated at a much higher rate in 4 years, as well as their overall graduation rates were much higher. And so we really wanted to offer that opportunity for students to live on campus for those 2 years as an effort to help keep students in graduating in a timely fashion. We will not be holding all of our current first year students to that 2-year requirement. And so if students do choose to live in the community when they come back to Merced in the fall, they wouldn't be required to live on campus, but we do want to make sure that that's an option available to those students, particularly for those first year students who had anticipated living in the residence halls and just weren't able to. We want to make sure that you get some of that experience. We will have to take a fair number of those rooms offline and hold them for what's called quarantine and isolation spaces. And so I saw there was a question, what happens if we have an outbreak on campus? We do have quarantine and isolation rooms where students who might come down with the virus or may have been exposed to someone with the virus would need to stay temporarily. And so we need to have those spaces set aside and make sure that they're available. And then we make all of the arrangements around food service so that you don't have to leave your room during that period of time while you're in isolation or you're in quarantine. It's a 10-day period right now under Centers for Disease Control guidelines. And so we would continue to have those spaces available, and that's what we would do if we did have cases pop up on campus. We wouldn't send you home for a lot of reasons. One, because we want you here and we're going to take care of you and do what we can to help you get recover if you do come down with the virus. But the other piece that happens, if we send you home, then we're just sending that virus back into all of these other communities. And so the other piece that we would try to do is create that quarantine and isolation space so that that wouldn't necessarily be a situation. So, well,
there's a question about summer classes. Are they going to be mostly in person like the fall? No, for summer, the majority of the classes will be offered remotely. The schedule is now live, so you can see that schedule. There's a handful of in-person classes, but most of the summer courses are being offered remotely.
And I do see that there's a question about, will there be some type of a summer orientation experience or an opportunity for next year's students who didn't have that opportunity this past summer of 20. Really what we're looking at doing is some type of a pre-start of the semester experience for that group of students. And so maybe coming a week earlier. So instead of having to take time off in the middle of summer to drive up to Merced or to come onto campus, what we're looking at is maybe having you come up just a little bit before school starts and having some type of experience just for you all. We recognize that you didn't have that summer orientation experience and you didn't have that time to do the welcome week and all that type of stuff and move-in day. And so we're looking at creating something for you that will be a special opportunity to welcome you to campus. Make sure you navigate all of those resources that right now you've been taking advantage of remotely. So our hope is to make sure that you know kind of how to continue to access those resources and where they're located on campus. And quite honestly, we're going to be shifting a ton of things around. We've opened up a ton of new buildings since a lot of students were on campus. And so I have a feeling that we'll be doing a lot of kind of tours of campus for all of our continuing students as we kind of introduce you to where new things are located, where the new campus store will be located and the new Students First Center and all of those opportunities for you all to meet and connect and develop some sense of how the campus operates. We'll definitely look at doing that. So for all of you continuing students, make sure that you know that we'll be putting things out there and inviting you to campus for those events. There is a question, Sarah, for students who don't feel comfortable coming in person for fall of 21, will there be an opportunity for them to attend courses online?
As of right now, not really. We have a handful of classes that will be offered online for the fall, but they're unlikely to be a full course load for any individual student's needs. So as of right now, we're planning for an in-person option. If public health conditions worsen or don't get better, as we're hoping, we may potentially have an option for students to elect to remain remotely. But as of right now, we're planning for in-person offerings of courses with appropriate social distancing, mask wearing, testing, and stuff to provide a safe environment for students to learn and thrive.
There is a question about your Bobcat grant, and one of the things I want to share. So the way that financial aid is awarded is we tell you how much you're going to get for the whole academic year, but we only give it to you half of it for each semester. So if your Bobcat grant is $5,000, we'd give $2,500 to you in the fall and another $2,500 in January. Because part of the piece with the grant is it's really to help cover your cost of attendance for that semester, and so that's why we break it in half. But once you get that information, in your financial aid award, it'll tell you the complete amount that you get, but know that we do split that in half and give that into two disbursements. Yeah.
Charles, there's another question regarding CAT tracks. And it's the question is, will CAT tracks resume normal transportation and routes like it was before COVID-19?
That is the plan. I think part of our situation with CAT tracks is some of those routes were really long, and we knew that students spent a lot of time on the bus. Part of what we're looking at is, are there ways that we better partner with the county bus offerings and do some routes where the county bus actually would cover some of those more outlying areas instead of all of those spaces that are closer to campus. The other thing that some of you should know, particularly those students who have not been in Merced for a while, there is a brand new housing complex that's being developed called the Merced Station, which is just down at the end of Yosemite and Lake. And they will be offering their own shuttle service from that space onto campus. So students who live there will have the opportunity to also use that shuttle service.
Thank you. I have a question for Dr. Frey. It's I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but if students do not feel comfortable attending class in person, are there other options for them for this fall?
Yeah, right now the planning for fall is to be in person. We don't expect to have sufficient online classes that a student could get sufficient classes to meet their course progress needs. We're really planning for an in-person semester. If public health conditions don't get better between now and then, we will reevaluate kind of as we go. But right now the plan is to have students back on campus. Most of our offerings would be in person, and unlikely that you could piece together enough online courses from the handful that are available remotely. But that being said, we want to keep our students safe, and we'll be continuously reevaluating as we approach August.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is for Dr. Nies. I'm going to combine two questions here. One is, can you talk more about our spring activities, including Coachella? And then could you also talk a little bit about what clubs and sports are going to look like in the fall? And can students gather on campus like they have in the past?
Yeah, both are really good questions. Right now, we are actually looking at doing some kind of a hybrid experience for Coachella. For those of you that have never experienced Coachella, it is UC Merced's own version of, well, it is our version of, it's Coachella, right? Let's not pretend. It's an awesome outdoor concert activity for our students. And so we've done it historically now for several years, and this year we're going to continue it. But what we're looking at doing is a potential hybrid version where their students can participate and enjoy the concert live streamed, as well as looking at potentially setting up a stage and almost running it like a drive-in movie situation where students will be able to drive onto campus and park in a parking lot and enjoy the concert from the comfort of their cars. And so that's kind of what we're looking at the end of April 24th. And so obviously we have to continue to watch all of the public health related information and whether or not that is a viable option for us to do at that point in time. But wanted to let you know that we are exploring that option, that Coachella would be kind of a hybrid situation, if you will. As far as our sports and other club and other activities, our hope is by fall we'll be able to have gatherings of sorts. So we need to again look at as many things as possible that we can do outdoors, as outdoors continues to be kind of a much more safe environment as far as mitigating the spread of the virus. We are still doing athletics. In fact, our cross country team participated in a tournament this past weekend. And this coming weekend, we open with home openers for women's and men's volleyball on Saturday and women's and men's soccer on Sunday. And so we're still doing athletics, and we're going to be live streaming all of that. So you'll be able to live stream free. They will be a fan-free events for the spring, but we're hoping by fall we'll be able to have you all enjoy some of those events and activities in person. We just may have to have smaller crowds and be thinking about the spacing and the distancing that we allow people to be in those different venues and spaces.
This one's for Dr. Nies. You had mentioned the development at Merced Station. Can students use their financial aid for off-campus housing?
So the way that your financial aid works, right, and UC Merced, we look at what an estimated total cost of attendance might be to go to the university. And in the fall, we'll be looking at 3 different costs of attendance. So it'll be those students who live on campus, those students who live off campus, and those students who live at home and commute. And then what we do is we look at what the average is for those different expenses. And then we package students based upon financial need to that total cost of attendance, one of those 3 different costs of attendance. If you choose to live off campus, your financial aid will be awarded in amount that you're eligible for. And if you get a refund, right, that means if everything that you're billed for from the university is covered with your financial aid award and you get a refund on top of it, then you can use that to cover your living expenses and your living costs to be a student. They will not direct bill. So if you lived at the Merced Station, it's not a direct bill onto your account. And so your financial aid wouldn't automatically pay for that and cover that like it does when you live on campus. But you would be able to get that refund check. And then we've got Sharon Coleman, who is our financial wellness advisor, and she works with a lot of students in coaching students to make sure that you figure out with that refund check, how do you budget it to make sure that there's enough money to pay your rent every month? Because that becomes a really important piece. Sometimes students get that refund check in August, but you need to make sure that all of that money there exist throughout the entire semester so that you can pay your rent throughout that time period. So
there's a question about travel, and it says, if students travel during breaks or holidays, do they have to quarantine before returning to campus, or is there some sort of on-campus procedure for them to return?
That's a great question, and a lot of that will, in the fall, will depend upon what the circumstances are at the time. We're really hoping that the vaccine will be rolling out more quickly here, and that come Thanksgiving time, many of our students may have been vaccinated by that point. But if not, there may be some procedure, either ending the semester remotely after Thanksgiving or quarantining or something like that. So for some of the holiday breaks in the fall, primarily Thanksgiving, it will really depend when we get to that point in the semester, what the public health conditions look like, what the situation is, how many of our students were able to get vaccinated prior to that point.
yeah, and that goes similar to the question about can you visit each other and all of that, right? I think that thinking about your bubble of folks that you hang out with and all of that becomes a really important thing even moving forward. And so it's not that we're going to restrict you from going off campus to work or going off campus to visit friends. We just want people to really be mindful of when you do that, how do you participate in those activities in a way that mitigate the potential spread of the virus. So yeah.
I just want to make note, there's another question about commencement, and I'll put it in the chat for you all to visit, but final decision regarding commencement should be shared early March. I include the link there to Commencement.UCMerced.edu, where updates will be provided. And also be sure to check your email for a message from campus regarding commencement activities for spring 2021. Charles, there's a question here about basketball. Is it true that UC Merced men's basketball team will be playing NCAA this fall?
We are still in the NAIA, so we have not moved out of our league into the NAIA. We are exploring kind of future options for athletics, particularly now that we've added the pool and we've got the opportunity to increase some of our athletic teams. What that might look like for us growing our athletic program, and does it make sense for us to continue to be in the NAIA, or should we move into the NCAA? And some of that also has to do with conferences. Where are the conferences that we would play in? The only Division III NCAA conference in California plays campuses all across the country, and so it's a lot of travel for our students, and so all of that needs to be taken into consideration. But right now, they are still in the NAIA. That doesn't mean that they haven't played NCAA teams. For example, our basketball team has played UC Riverside in the past, which is an NCAA team. So.
This question is for Dr. Frey, and it says, since there are so few students living on campus currently, is there a consideration for offering in-person classes in the larger classrooms while maintaining distancing?
No, for spring, the plan is really to remain all our class offerings at a distance. We don't plan on opening classrooms. We just don't have critical mass for the students who are on campus, of critical mass of the students in the same course to offer them in person. We don't have kind of the infrastructure in place to set up so that some students who are at a distance can participate equally and hear the questions from the class and ask questions right now. So we don't plan on changing the modality of any of our in-progress spring classes. However, for the fall, as we look ahead, we are hoping to do normal in person, but we are also planning on some other contingencies that would involve putting classes in larger rooms and allowing for social distance so that you sit every other seat or every third seat and allow for some distancing as we think about planning for fall. But right now we don't plan on any change for the spring courses.
Thank you. The next question is about the housing application process. Dr. Nies, do you mind sharing more about the Fall 21 housing process and applications?
Yeah, and so in about a month or so, we will start to, actually in March, we will start to reach out to all of our continuing students about their interest in living on campus. And so we'll look for an email that will go out to everybody about filling out a contract for living on campus for the fall. again, we have to look at what we're going to be allowed to do. Right now, the state has issued higher education guidelines. And those higher education guidelines still state that all on-campus housing for universities has to be in single rooms. They haven't updated that, which is part of the reason why we have nobody living in double rooms currently, because we're not allowed to buy higher ed, the state guidelines from overseeing higher education. And so those guidelines need to be changed and updated. And so we anticipate that that will happen and allow us to move students into double rooms. But until that, we don't know how many beds we'll be able to offer on campus students. So we have students fill out contracts, and that helps us get a sense of who's interested and an opportunity for us to start doing some planning from that standpoint as we continue then to pay attention to what the state mandates. But as far as filling out that contract, you all should receive email notification and information about the opportunity to fill out the housing contract in the next few weeks.
And in addition to that, can you talk about the pricing for fall housing for singles versus doubles?
Yeah, and so currently what we did, because we were mandated that all students had to live in a single room, we charge the cost of a double room, which is actually what we build our financial aid around. And so all of our financial aid is structured around the cost of living in a double room. And so that's kind of what we will use moving forward. And so again, not being able to put students in triples or quads would limit us to have students living in that environment. And sometimes those are a cheaper on-campus housing rate, living in a triple or a quad. But know that we package and we look at financial aid from a standpoint of the double room cost. And so we'll continue to try to make sure that students have access to that financial aid to cover that expense.
Thank you so much. Another question came back around, will masks be mandatory on campus? I'm assuming for this fall.
The current plan is yes, masks will be mandatory on campus. We expect folks to be wearing them for quite a while, even after being vaccinated. And if you are not vaccinated, I think there's a plan to wear masks extra long. So yes, masks we expect to be mandatory. The exact details on which spaces and for how long will be rolled out later.
Perfect, thank you. The next question about dining. How will dining in the pavilion look in the fall?
Well, we're hoping to be able to open it up. We'll probably have to not have as many chairs and everything in there as we have in the past. But just like now, it's different parts of California, you're seeing indoor dining starting to pick up in restaurants. We anticipate that trend will still continue. And that we'll be able to have students go through the pavilion and be able to get food and stay indoors. But again, it might be limited seating. And so we're going to try to make sure that we also promote some outdoor seating options in different areas where students can go to enjoy their food. And so we might have to look at what some of those to-go options might be for students if we can't accommodate everybody physically inside. Because as you know, the current pavilion is all you care to eat. So once you go in, you stay in, you eat there, and you don't carry food out. And so we may have to look at options that we would do differently if we aren't able to fully have everyone stay inside, and what to-go options would be. We also have the Yablikoff Wallace Dining Center, which could be another way for us to have some of those grab-and-go meals for students at that facility. And more of the in-person seating going on at the pavilion.
I have another.
I also saw a question about the arts. Can I jump to the arts question?
Please do.
Fantastic. Some of the limitations that we had around arts on campus is that the art programs that we have, a lot of them are linked to courses. And when we move courses to remote, we moved all of those art courses and that art instruction to remote as well. As Sarah mentioned, we're planning on having those in person for the fall. And so all of those art courses and art sponsored events and activities will be up and running and ready to go. in the fall. A lot of our other arts-related activities on campus are through student clubs and organizations, and without our clubs and organizations physically being in person at this point in time, that's part of the reason why a lot of our dance clubs, for example, have not been up and running. But we anticipate that all of that will be back up and running and ready to move forward. We've got a new position that we've got at the university. It's been in place now for over a year, which is really focused on the arts and the way that we not only increase art on the campus through physical arts and different art shows, working closely with the Merced Arts Council and the Multicultural Arts Center downtown, but different ways that we are partnering with these different agencies and groups to promote the arts and have our students participate in the arts. And so Kim Gardner has been leading that up, and we expect that will be able to pick up in full force in the fall as we continue to think about more in-person experiences.
You have a question for Dr. Frey. Is it likely that some psychology courses would be remote for fall 2021?
I hope not, because right now our current plan for fall is that the vast majority of classes will be in person. And so if we had psychology courses remotely, that would mean most of our courses would be shifting at the last minute to being remote because public health conditions got worse. So right now the plan is for in-person offerings. When you see the schedule go live for fall, most of those courses will be offered in person, except for a very small handful. So you shouldn't expect to be able to find the courses you need necessarily offered to be able to take it fully remotely.
Right. I have a follow-up question. Will we have the option to not have class in person if it's our last semester?
Again, we're planning for an in-person offering, so unless the very small number of online courses happen to be exactly the ones you need for to finish your graduation, I would say that's unlikely. We are currently planning on having mostly in-person offerings, so students should plan on returning to campus right now, and we will make sure to give you ample notice if public health conditions change or don't change for the better as much as we expect. So the projection is that we'll be getting more vaccination, we'll be doing a good job containing the virus, and by fall we'll be in a position to welcome you back to campus.
Great. Dr. Nies, you talked about housing earlier, and one of the questions here is what housing will be available for fall since it's not available this year? And I think if you could talk maybe more about the 2020 side and some of our current housing options on the north side of campus.
Sure. So currently, as some of you may know, we've opened up kind of the Summits community, Cathedral, Tenaya, and Half Dome, as well as Mariposa and Tuolumne up in the Sierra Terraces. And we're using Valley Terraces kind of for our quarantine and isolation spaces. All of that will be open in the fall. We're currently not using Glacier, Granite, Sentinel Rock, and El Portal, which are our residence halls kind of on the other side of the lake. All of those we plan to have open up and ready to use for fall semester. So some of those students will be moving into Sentinel Rock, and El Portal would be the first people ever to live in those spaces.
Can you talk about what will be open on campus? The question is, will the library and other locations be open on campus? I imagine that students are interested about what will be open during fall 2021.
We're expecting a mixture depending on what the conditions look like at the time of the fall semester. Some smaller, like one-on-one office hours or something in small offices may have to be shifted. We do expect some amount of library access to be available, and kind of each campus location will evaluate depending on what the conditions are, how they offer their services. We expect there may be some sort of blend of offerings, like advising may have some amount of in-person availability, but also some virtual hours, kind of depending on what it looks like. We have found some things during the COVID that have expanded our ideas for how we should be offering our services. And I expect well into the future, we may have some services continue to have a remote option. So you can get later in the evening access to tutors, for example, not have to walk across campus from the dorms to get access to certain resources in the evening. So we're gonna be looking at a variety of different modalities, but we do expect spaces like the library and some of the other major spaces to have to be open to students.
And another question around classes, will there be a no pass option this semester?
great question. I should know within 24 hours. We had a vote by our undergraduate council on extending the pass no pass option, and the vote is supposed to be communicated to me tomorrow. So I should know for you soon, and you should check your email later in the week for an announcement about the pass no pass this semester. I don't know the answer to that yet, but will very shortly.
Dr. Nies, you mentioned the new Pool and Aquatic Center. Are there plans to start UCM swim team?
Yeah, we're looking at which direction we might go. We currently have a water polo club, and so we've got men and women on our campus who are playing water polo as a club sport. So that might be the direction we go because we already have the club team instead of going with a swim team. But both of those are options that we are looking into and are hoping to develop.
And then another one about food. Will food trucks be coming back?
That's a great question. Part of what we need to look at from a public health standpoint is that, you know, how do we ensure, particularly food trucks are outside vendors that are coming onto campus and then interacting with our campus community. And so we would have to look at whether or not outside vendors that come onto campus and interact with our campus community are willing to abide by the same protocols that we do. People will probably still need to be getting tested on a regular basis. On a daily basis, you have to do symptom checking to make sure that you're monitoring your own health. All of that becomes part of it. And so we'd have to look at how we do that and do that in a way that really supports the public health standpoint. Food trucks are create a grab and go environment. They create a food option environment. It's outdoors. And so from a lot of standpoints, there's advantages to using the food trucks. It's just whether or not we can still bring that type of activity onto the campus on a regular basis. As far as other rooms, I mean, we're hoping that, you know, as was mentioned, the study lounges that currently are closed, those are all being closed by, again, this higher education guidelines that say that public areas and student residence halls have to be restricted in their use. We're hoping that all of that will free up in the study rooms, both in the library as well as study rooms around campus, and for students living in our on-campus housing in our residence halls, that they will have access to those study rooms. Again, we're limiting the number of seats in there or the furniture in that spaces so that we don't have overcrowding, and we continue to make sure that there's enough physical distance between folks when they're using that space. So all of that will continue to be monitored.
There's another question about classes from Dr. Frey. Based on social distancing and number of students per class, will more classes be available to enroll in?
Right now, we're planning a fairly typical fall schedule. So the same number of courses that we'd normally offer in the fall, the same kind of distribution of classes will be offered. Right now, the plan is if we had to go to reduced capacity in the classrooms, it might be something where we alternate days. So some students attend on Tuesday, some students attend on Thursday, or there's some remote option for some of those classes, or some classes are online, some are in person. We're still working out those scenarios. It probably won't be decided unless we get closer to the semester start and we have to pivot. But we are working on contingency plans for that and what that would look like. But as of right now, the course offering should be fairly similar to last fall and fairly similar to the fall before that as far as the number of classes, the types of classes, the size of the classes that we're offering.
Wonderful, thank you. There's another question about vaccines, and the question is, will vaccinated individuals also have opportunities to renew their vaccines if needed?
Yeah, that's our hope, right? I think the first goal is to get as many people vaccinated with, again, depending upon where vaccines go and they develop. So current one by Johnson & Johnson that's being developed is only one shot, whereas the two that are currently out there are 2 shots. Our focus right now, and which is what we're using on campus, our current goal is to make sure that everybody gets their vaccine, whether it's 1 dose or 2 doses, depending upon the product. So that'll be our first priority, is do what we can to make sure everyone gets that vaccine. And then after that, we will run regular vaccination clinics annually, much like we do the flu shot, I anticipate. And so if there is a sense that you need to kind of annually get a new dose of the vaccine, it's as long as that continues to be available and we're continuing to able to get it onto the campus, we'll run those vaccination clinics much in the same way we run the flu vaccine clinics.
Thank you. There's another question. It's about alumni reunions. And when are they? And are they typically in 10-year increments? Charles, can you talk more about that?
Sure. So I also saw an earlier question about, do you get to keep your email for life? And we do. We're super nice that way. And then what we do annually, we host a homecoming event. And so every fall, there's a homecoming opportunity for students to come back, for alums to come back and celebrate, see one another. And then as we continue to move forward, we'll do those events celebrating every 5 years, every 10 years. But that doesn't mean you can't come back every year, because we love you. We want you to come back every year. Why wouldn't we want you to come back every year? So you can come back as frequently, but typically what universities do is they host special opportunities for 5-year class, 10-year class. I'm not sure we'll continue to do that. I think one of the pieces that we're also finding is that you tend to have a lot of peer groups that didn't necessarily graduate the same year you did. They may have graduated a year before you or a year after you, but we're part of your peer group. And so a trend that we're actually seeing on a lot of campuses is to cluster them. And so it's a group of students within a 3-year period that graduated together, that group of alums would be invited back for some type of a special celebration, in part just because we know that we don't all graduate at the same time as our peer group. So, but know that annually in October is when we do homecoming, and you as an alumnus or an alumna will be invited to come back and join us.
Awesome, thank you. There's another question about housing, and it says, given that on-campus housing will be limited for fall 2021, the housing market in Merced is small as it is, does UC have any concern that students may not be able to attend in-person classes and also find housing nearby?
Yeah, I think the housing market's opened up quite a bit in Merced. For those of you that haven't been in the city, they're building all over the place. And there is the new, as I said, the new Merced Station, which is adding 900 beds, and that'll be open in the fall. And so our sense is that there will be that space available. We're continuing to work. Martin Reed, who is our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Campus Life, continues to work with off-campus housing opportunities and promoting different ways for students to find access to those resources. So we're continuing to look at how we develop that and the partnerships that we might want to move forward with different groups. But with the new 900 beds at the Merced Station, as well as the availability of other apartment units, the Campus Point apartment units that all have come online within the past couple of years, I think that the housing market has freed up a little bit, and that could help. The other big thing that freed up the housing market, quite honestly, is we finished our construction project. And so there were a lot of people that were in the Merced area that were working on the 2020 project for 3 years. And now that that construction project is completed, that has also freed up the housing market a little bit in Merced. Buying a house is a little bit more complicated because I know that market goes really fast, but rentals tend to be available for folks.
Great. There's 2 subsequent questions. One's about the pricing at Merced Station, and does the university have any connection with them at the pricing at Merced Station? And the other one is, can a student live on campus for just one semester, fall 2020, if they're planning on, and I imagine, graduating during the fall term?
Yeah, and so while we have students that fill out a full year contract, we make adjustments and we release students out of those contracts, particularly those students that graduate, or for students who might be studying abroad or participating in one of our other off-campus academic programs, such as UC in Sacramento or UC DC. So if you participate in those programs, we'll work with you to cancel your housing contract with no cost to you. And then, of course, if you graduate, we release you from your housing contract as well.
And the other question was about the pricing at Merced Station.
Yeah, I don't know. That I don't know. Sorry, I just met with them on Anthony and I met with them last week, right, Anthony? And so I don't know, quite honestly, what their housing price is. I'm sorry.
And I'll just make a note on our, I put it in the answered questions, but continue to visit our off-campus housing website hosted through residential education for updates around preferred off-campus sites that the university has a partnership. And that's where we'll also continue to post updates regarding future partnerships with other developments that are opening up within the region that may be a viable option for our students. There are two questions about campus activities. One, will clubs be allowed to operate on campus? And then two, will alumni still have free access to Coachella, treats and beats, and other campus events after they graduate?
Man, the alums are just wanting free things all of a sudden. Free email, free access to Coachella. You know, I obviously we have to look at how we monitor the space. Our priority is our current students. A lot of those events and activities are paid for through student fees. And so whether or not alum are able to have access to those spaces, one that depends upon the space availability, right? If we're only allowed to have 3,000 students at Treats and Beats or at Coachella, obviously the priority would be to students and the students who pay those fees to bring on those events. And so I can't give you any guarantee. Take advantage of it. Our alum need to take advantage of it now while we're live streaming it, because anybody can do that for free. But whether or not in person, I'm not sure. We are expecting that our clubs and organizations will continue to be able to meet and organize in person in the fall. We'll have to look at spaces and whether or not we can kind of find different ways to accommodate the space. So I've been in a couple of club meetings. Students have invited me to their club and organization meetings, and we've crammed 50 people into a room that probably seats 45 or worse. Obviously, that is stuff that we won't want to do moving forward as we look at how do we create good social distancing. We're going to look at how we can make available more outdoor spaces for clubs and organizations to hold their meetings, if that's a possibility. All of that provides, again, a potential healthier public health site for us to do if you can host those outdoors. And so all of that will be some of the stuff that we explore, as well as what are maybe larger spaces that could accommodate student meetings so that we're not overcrowding in a small room. So.
Thank you. And our last question we have open right now is about study abroad. Dr. Frey, are there any anticipated cancellation of study abroad programs for the fall?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is we just don't know yet. I expect that some of our study abroad partners are going to be, doing the same thing we're doing with our fall, looking at public health conditions, seeing if it's safe. They probably have deadlines at which they're planning on announcing any changes to their study abroad opportunities. So I feel like a broken record today. I feel like I've said the same thing over and over again, but it will depend on public health conditions. And as we approach the fall semester, we'll try to keep people updated. And I imagine the same is true of people who are signed up for and thinking about study abroad options.
We just had one more question come in. It says, will the marketplace open up for the fall semester?
We hope so. We're actually right now working with the fire marshal. As some of you know, we need to meet fire codes, right? We can't do things in spaces unless the fire marshal says that it meets fire codes. And we're looking at that to think about how we might reconfigure the marketplace and how we can deliver those services that students want through the marketplace in a way that makes sense. And so all of that's being explored, but we will have some type of option available for students in the fall semester. Just not sure exactly how that will be laid out.
And there's another question here. It says, will we have more opportunities to connect with the Chancellor moving forward, maybe in this town hall style meeting?
That's a great question. And I meet with him tomorrow and I'll ask him. Let's see what we can do.
And I'll also drop in the link. The Chancellor does post student hours monthly, and I'll drop the link in the chat for students to sign up to meet with the Chancellor during his office hours.
Yeah, and I will say we canceled his January office hours because no students signed up. So So if you are interested, please sign up to meet him and maybe have more of a one-on-one conversation with him. Then please sign up for those office hours. He hosts them monthly.
And there's another question here. If you decide to live on campus, will there be an option to have a vehicle on campus?
I hope so. I hope that we'll be able to accommodate that, particularly for our continuing students. We've added more parking spaces, and hopefully the other piece that we're looking at doing is with the bus service and other ways to do ride share. As some of you know, the campus reached carbon neutrality this year, and so we are the only public university to have done so in the country, and one of only 10 universities in the country to be carbon neutral. The way that we continue to move forward with some of our environmental practices and sustainable practices is we need to look at our overall impact on the environment. And so if everybody is driving their own car to and from campus, all of that is not necessarily good for our environment. And so the more we can increase the use of the cat tracks, as well as other rideshare programs, all of that is a way that we can reduce our carbon footprint. But ultimately, that also increases parking opportunities for students to have cars on campus.
A question about student involvement. Can students sign up for student government as we are remote this semester?
Yeah, student government is still meeting. They meet every Wednesday night. So tomorrow night at 7 o'clock is the Senate meeting. So ASUCM Senate meeting still happens. And then the Graduate Student Association also meets monthly. And so if you're a grad student, know that that still is happening on a regular basis as well. So both the undergraduate and graduate student governments are moving forward. They're always looking for opportunities for students to get involved. But if you're interested in getting involved, make sure you're looking at the postings that might be available. I know that our first year students are all in the dens, and there's a lot of things that are being posted in the dens as far as ongoing events and activities for you to be a part of. There's also an opportunity for the Bobcat Leadership Series, and so the Margaret Hughes Leadership Center is hosting a lot of different ways for students to get involved and get engaged. But know that we will be starting to take nominations for next year's ASCCM. Elections happen right after spring break, I believe, and so the first part of March is when students will start to file for running for office, and then you can expect the elections right after spring break for next year's student government. So please find those, pay attention on different postings through Instagram and Twitter and other social media. UC Merced Connect is another way that we're putting information out there. And then through the DENS, through Microsoft Teams. A lot of information is being posted there as well. So take advantage.
So I'm gonna share one last question, and I'll share links to the other two questions there. But so some of us alumni are asking for free things, but who do we contact if we want to donate money, for example, to a football field?
Well, first off, we have to approve football, and that's really expensive to have a football team. We are looking at continuing to expand potential opportunities for both the arts as well as for sports and our athletic fields. And so know that there will be opportunities for alum to donate to a lot of those experiences that we're hoping to continue to create for our students. We'll probably do a baseball field before we'll do a football field, though, just letting you know. But we're happy to support your giving, no matter how large or small it would be. Is there a space for a theater? So we have a dedicated art space for those of you that haven't been in the arts facility. That space now has a recording studio. It's got painting studios. It's got a documentary film studio. And so we've got some of those things, as well as the other art spaces that are still available over in social science and management. As far as a true theater, there is a site that was set aside to build a black box theater, another great donor opportunity for our alums. Right now, we are looking at how we continue to partner with other spaces in town. There's a black box theater at the Multicultural Arts Center, as well as a stage at the Playhouse Merced. and a stage at the Merced Theater. And so how we can partner with them and use some of the spaces that exist in the community and expand kind of the arts, not just for our students, but for the community as well.
Thank you, Dr. Nies and Dr. Frey, for serving as panelists tonight. And I would invite you if you have any closing statements. Actually, Charles, you mentioned the cherry blossoms on Friday. Do you mind talking about that really quickly? Trees on campus, including the cherry blossoms.
Yeah, so the cherry blossoms are about to pop open and bloom. So that's there. The trees that we have planted, and so we planted a lot of trees. In fact, ASUCM helps support the planting of a tree grove as well through a donation made by ASUCM. But the trees that we're planting now are more native to the region. Cherry blossoms are not native to the region. So we won't be planting any more cherry blossom trees, but we did plant a lot of trees. They just take a little bit of time to grow. So when you come back for your 10-year reunion, all those alums out there, we will give you a free tour of campus and make sure that you're able to enjoy those trees that we've planted.
Thank you so much for all the great questions, and we hope you're having a good semester. I know a lot of you are having midterms right now, so hope those are going well. Hope you're finding time to study and focus. I know that can be a challenge. Please continue to let us know what we can do to better support you as we progress throughout this semester. So love to get your feedback on ways we can be better helping you this semester and as we look forward to the fall. Thanks.
Yeah, and I would just add how much I appreciate you all taking the time out to join us tonight. I know that you are on Zoom calls all day long with class and then interacting a lot of times with friends over social media. And so we appreciate you taking that time and joining us for one more screen time that you hung out with us tonight. You asked great questions. We have put a lot of those resources all in one website. I know that it used to be hard to kind of find all of that stuff because you would have to go to this different office and that different office on the website to find all of that information. Success.UCMerced.edu is where we've put all of that information to support you. So again, if you're looking for some of those resources, know that we've created a one-stop UC Merced webpage to help you navigate the fall or the spring semester. So thanks so much for joining us. We're going to do it again next month, and we look forward to your questions. Take care. Have a good night.